resource maximum. Let's say I want to be eligible for Medicaid next month, April 1st. I have my assets below $2,000 or $4,000, depending on the program I'm applying for, before the end of this month. So on April 1st, I'm below $2,000. I apply for Medicaid. I get all my paperwork in, have a meeting, I give them everything, and I know it's going to take them 3 to 6 months to make me eligible. During those 3 to 6 months, if I let my income accumulate in my bank account or in my QIT, I'm not going to be eligible for Medicaid for that 3 to 6 months. And what's going to happen is, in month 6, I'm going to get a call from a very nice caseworker who's going to say, oh, by the way, we need your bank statements for the last 3 to 6 months because that's how long it's taken us to process your application. And I send in the bank statements, and I get a call from a very nice person saying, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you something, but we're not responsible to. And we forgot to tell you that you were supposed to pay your income every month to the facility that you were in, and you didn't, so congratulations, you're eligible for Medicaid on April 1st, but you're not in May, June, July, and August. So quick pay it over and start doing that going forward in the future. Surprise, surprise, you get a bill from the facility. And if it's a nursing facility, you get a bill for $50,000. The people in Medicaid do not have an obligation and are not held to give you this advice. That's the way the law works. It's the same thing as the IRS. You know, you could call the IRS and say, is it okay to do X? And they could say, yes, it's okay to do X. And if it wasn't okay to do X, they're not held responsible for that. You're responsible for that. And that also says, don't do your Medicaid application at home. There's too many little tiny rules that get people caught up. And because it takes 3 to 6 months to become eligible, you don't find out until 6 months pass. And there's another issue. Let's say I'm someone's power of attorney and I do their Medicaid application for my mother and I blow it. Guess what? The nursing facility, because I know Chelsea would never do it, but a nursing facility will sue me, for being a negligent power of attorney. Negligent power of attorney. Because they're not going to get paid $50,000 that they're out of pocket. How do people screw up? I'll give you a good example. I already told you one, they don't pay the income over while they're pending eligibility for Medicaid. Number 2, insurance. I cannot get Medicaid benefits and own an insurance policy with face value over $1,500, $1,500. I don't know that. I don't get rid of all my policies. I'm not eligible for Medicaid. I find that out 6 months later. Happens all the time. Here's another one. Crazy one. I've seen it happen. I'm very careful. And I know my mom has to be below $2,000 of assets on the last day of March, so she'll be eligible for Medicaid in April. And I'm not worried about the Social Security because that doesn't get deposited until the 3rd of April, right? It's the next month. I'm not worried about that. But I leave $2,000 in my mom's checking account. And you know, I got a good credit union and they're really good. They actually give my mom interest, okay? And even though the interest rate is 0.0025%, on the 30th of the month, they post the interest of 5 cents. My mom has $2,000.05. She is not eligible for Medicaid the next day, okay? Now, by the way, if I catch this stuff early enough, I know how to fix it up. I know how to clean that stuff up. A lot of people don't. So it's an excellent question in that, how long does it take to be eligible for Medicaid? It takes 3 to 6 months. During that 3 to 6 months, you have to pretend you are eligible, and you have to act as if you are and pay over your private cost, your cost share to the facility that you're in, or you may not be eligible when you thought you were. It's very frustrating. One more thing on this point. The people who work in Medicaid are very good. They're very hardworking. They don't get paid a lot. It's managed by the county. I like working with them. However, they have too many files. And in the state of New Jersey, we have a very tough state, I already said it before, for eligibility for Medicaid. They have to look at every check and every deposit over $500, which is crazy, for a 5-year period. Even if you live very simply, that's a lot of checks, okay? And they're backlogged on their applications. And these people, and this is my own opinion, these people who work there have bosses. And their bosses want to see how they're producing. Are they getting their jobs done? And what they often do in Medicaid in order to juggle their files is they send you a letter. And it's a letter asking you for something you've already given them. Why? Because then their supervisor sees, oh, okay, now I know why this file isn't done, because they need a form that we don't have, and we got to get it from the, the applicant. Send it in anyway. Send it again.
Yeah.
Don't fight that bureaucracy. You're not going to win against that bureaucracy. More questions? Men.
I just wondering if you could repeat what you said about the life insurance and eligibility. If you have life insurance, you may not be eligible for Medicaid.
The question is, if you have life insurance, you may not be eligible for Medicaid. You cannot get Medicaid benefits owning life insurance in excess, with face value, in excess of $1,500. Now, there are a lot of things you can do. Number one, you can cash it in. Number two, you can assign it irrevocably to a funeral home. Now, in the past, we used to be able to assign it to a special trust, a special thing called the Sure Trust that was managed by the funeral directors, but they didn't like doing the paperwork, and they weren't charging enough to manage this trust in order to keep it around. So now you have to manage, you have to either cash it in, assign it to the funeral home. And if you don't do that, you're not eligible for Medicaid, okay? And you have to do it the month before you want to be eligible for Medicaid. More questions?
Yeah.
Sir. Oh, and then I'll get to you over here. Don't worry about it. Yes.
Okay, if I'm reading this right, in order to apply for Medicaid, part of this is you have to have this trust fund set up. So how long do you have to set it up prior to even applying or being eligible? And if in the meantime, can you use it while you're waiting to see if you are eligible for a Medicaid?
The question is, how long in advance do you need to set up the trust? You need to set up the QIT the month before you want to be eligible for Medicaid. It's solely to establish Medicaid eligibility. And then in that first month, you're anticipating eligibility. That's when you actually start the functioning of it. But it must be in place with the bank account open the month prior to applying for eligibility. Ma'am.
Question regarding how annuities would affect this. Now, there are various types of annuities. Some you take out, some you take out when you need it. Some people take it out every month, and some can take it out upon need. How would that affect if you have a balance in an annuity? It's considered not income or income?
The question is, how do annuities affect Medicaid eligibility generally and the QIT? By the way, I think this lady has moved into the first position on the raffle win. Okay, I'm sorry, because actually this gentleman there has probably already won it outright. Okay,
That's okay.
an annuity has two phases. In the first phase, it's liquid. You can close it out. You can take all the money you want out of it. There may be a penalty, but you can. That's an asset for Medicaid purposes, and if it's greater than $2,000 or $4,000, depending on the Medicaid program, I'm not eligible because I got the annuity. There's a second phase to the annuity. In the second phase of the annuity, you start receiving monthly payments, and you tell the annuity company, that's all I want. I never want to be able to get my hands on that principal again. If you have what we call an annuitized annuity, that money, if it plus your other income exceeds $2,199, has to be run through the annuity, the QIT. However, we have to be very careful about annuities. Some annuities are marvelous. They're ones that I use to help people do one of two things. Either A, save their assets if they're single and protect them from the threat of long-term care. We use annuities all the time. Or number two, fix up a problem because they unknowingly made a gift 4 years ago. Believe it or not, I can use an annuity, a very special annuity, an annuity that's an entirely different lecture, in order to protect that person from a penalty from Medicaid as a result of a gift they made years before even getting ill. Okay? Unfortunately, there's a lot of nefarious people out there selling annuities for one of two reasons, and I'm glad you asked the question. That's why you're in first place on the raffle, okay? So long as you put your name in the hat, okay? Number one, they're selling them to get people what's known as veterans' pensions. It's also for a non-veteran called aid and attendance. There's asset limits to get these veterans pensions, and these annuity salesmen go around saying that we're veteran specialists and we'll help you get this benefit, which is a very good benefit, but you end up buying an annuity. That very same annuity could make you ineligible for Medicaid. What other people, nefarious people say with annuities? They say to them, you know, if you buy an annuity, the nursing home can't get it. They can't get it. It's protected. What does that really mean? What it really means is that you buy an annuity, you're not eligible for Medicaid, you can't pay the nursing home because you're getting monthly payments from the annuity, you're not getting a lump sum, you're not eligible for Medicaid, and when the nursing home sues you for not being paid, they can't execute upon the annuity. They can't say to the annuity company, give us the money, he owes it to us. An annuity is not executable, if that's a good word. And that's not good, because why would you want to get sued? All right? It's not really safe from the nursing home, and I don't think there's anyone in this room who would want to set themselves up or their relative to be sued and have someone executing upon their assets. However, there are annuities that are very helpful for fixing up Medicaid problems, and I do it all the time. For protecting assets, that's a goal. But there are also annuities that are very harmful. Okay, ma'am.
Okay, you had said that you should apply a month before you should apply a month, or set up the QIT a month before you expect to need it. Is that what you said?
The question is,
should be eligible for the Medicaid.
Right, the question is, should you set up the QIT a month before being eligible for Medicaid? The answer is yes, it has to be set up a month before. I wouldn't do it beforehand. But
does that mean that in that a month before you expect to have used up all of your assets?
Correct, a month, in the month where you know the next month your total assets are going to be below $2,000, okay? Let's say something about that. People ask me, when should I apply for Medicaid? Well, the first part of a Medicaid application is the medical review, and that has to be done well before that month. That has to be done at least a month before the month you want to be eligible for Medicaid. It's called a pre-screening, right? That has to be done. If I want to be eligible for Medicaid, and anyone working for the facility can correct me if I'm wrong, if I want to be eligible for Medicaid April 1, I have to have my pre-screening submitted before the last day of February, right? I'm getting nods, correct. Pre-screening means that the people at the Medicaid and the county district office know that I'm going to be applying for Medicaid, and they have to come and make sure I'm sick enough to get it, all right? So that's a totally different issue. People also ask me, when should I submit my Medicaid application? Your Medicaid application is not going to be considered until you are below the asset minimum, until your assets are below the $2,000 or $4,000. And by the way, I want to say it again to avoid confusion. That's for a single person. Married people are far different. Okay, married people are far different. Different lecture. Okay, you're invited. Let me finish. Okay. When should I start putting my Medicaid application together? 3 or 4 months easily before even needing to apply. The paperwork for a Medicaid application is beyond belief. It's every check, every deposit slip, every bank statement on every account you had in the 5 years prior to applying for Medicaid. And when I mean every account, if you and I had a joint account 4 years ago when you were in college because you needed the money to pay, for food and stuff, and my name was on that account, that's an account I have to give to Medicaid. If you and I were married and I died 3 years ago, but 2 years we had an account in both of our names, we need to give that account to Medicaid. It's far more inclusive than what people think. More questions?
I think that's what I was going to talk about. Something about you can't give your money away 5 years prior.
The question is, can you give your money, this is the major question, which is an entirely different lecture about Medicaid. That's okay, don't be sorry. You're still up there on the There's an incredible amount of misinformation about the 5-year period in Medicaid. The 2 short lines. Number 1, if I'm Bill Gates, and I used to say Malcolm Forbes, but then he died on me. If I'm Bill Gates and I give away all my money and wait 5 years before applying for Medicaid, I don't have to tell them being the county, that I gave you all my money, okay? Do people protect their assets within 5 years? Absolutely. It's how I make my living. I do it all the time. What I'm saying is, do not think that if you're in a crisis, you can't do certain things to protect your assets. You can. But the problem is, once again, you can't do it at home. Okay? You can't do it based on what the plumber says. That was my lecture on Wednesday night. And I had a lady ask me a funny question. She asked me a question. She said, my sister wants to do this kind of a finagle with her money. And I keep telling her she can't do it, and she won't listen to me. And I said to her, well, guess what? She's not going to listen to me either. Tell her the plumber told you she couldn't do that with the money. And she was happy with that answer. Are we all right on time? Okay. More? Nothing? Well, fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You're really an excellent audience. Remember the raffle. And do you want to say?
I want to give out the raffle.
Oh, we're going to do the raffle right now.